How do you know when to change your rubber? When you start chopping up windows, basically. But just because it's not wearing on your ends, it could wear in the middle as well, depending on how you're squeegeeing and how you handle the tool in general. How do you know when to change that rubber? Now, in this video, you will notice things that is suitable to keep using that same rubber or change it. It'll be your discretion. But I'm gonna show you another option to utilizing that rubber that you think needs to be changed a little bit longer, maybe a lot longer. And if you want to use that rubber, if you're running low on supplies, you can put that rubber in a tool where you only use for straight pulls. Now, some people might swivel windows in the hand. You know, I think most of us tend to swivel, you know, what I mean by swivel, you know, do the S technique, you know, and so on and so forth, in the hand rather than on a pole, because most people don't have a swivel tool, so they're stuck doing straight pulls anytime they use a pole. This is why these people that I'm talking about prefer to use ladders. For one thing, it is boring as all heck to do straight pulls with a pole. It's not to say that it can't be done, but most people think that they have to put a rag on a pole and detail the heck out of the edges. If you do your straight pulls correctly, a million times I said it before, you will never have to put a rag on a pole to detail your corners. I already showed y'all how to do that. I mean, come on now, this ain't rocket science. Now, swivel tools obviously make it a hell of a lot easier if you're using a pole, especially on those difficult windows. But you gotta know when to change that rubber when you're swiveling. You better look for those things. If you start leaving marks like what I'm about to show you, then it's time to either change that rubber or you stop swiveling with that tool on a pole and do straight pulls. And that goes for the same thing in the hand. Stop swiveling, because you're going to be leaving those marks all day long. And those marks aren't butcher marks. They aren't mistakes from somebody who doesn't know how to clean a window properly. Those are mistakes from bad rubber. When you make your turn, it will always leave that mark. When you see that, it's time to start doing straight pulls. Either that or change your goddamn rubber. That's all I got to say. So I'm about to explain to you what that mark looks like for those who don't know. All right, top of the morning to y'all. I don't know if you can see, but right here, these are little turn marks. All right. Now, when your rubber starts getting worn, you don't have to change it. What you do is you change up your technique and do straight pulls. Because when the rubber starts getting worn in the center, that comes from people squeegeeing water off the ledges too much, because it usually wears down on the end first. But when you got this little mark right here, you see, I could just use my finger and just buff it right out. You just take your detail finger and buff it right out, but you gotta have a clean finger. That's tip number one. Tip number two is when you have little squeegee marks, and it's not because of the ends of your rubber, it's because your rubber's slightly getting worn. Don't change it. What you do is you can still get another 2, 3, maybe 4 days out of it if you don't do any swiveling. If you just go straight pulls, then you're fine, you know. But With straight pulls, you're stuck detailing the edges. If you don't adopt my technique with the feathering and then make your cross pull. There is no detailing involved. I've showed you in a video. There is no need to detail a window when you do straight pulls if you do it M.A.W's way. All right, so that's today's little tip. I'm gonna try and show you another example of these little faint squeegee marks that you leave behind. All right, here's another example right here. Just take your finger and buff it out. But that's what I'm saying. You'll find little turn marks like that. You'll find little, like when you're squeegeeing, when you turn, it'll leave, wherever you turn at is where it's gonna leave that faint mark. The problem is, you won't notice it while you're there. You only notice it as that little condensation of that faint mark actually starts to evaporate and dry. You'll see a little ash mark. That's because your rubber is slightly getting warm. It doesn't have that sharp edge anymore. When you start to see that, usually it's time to change your rubber. But when you're like me in the middle of a job, sometimes you don't want to stop, you want to keep going. So there's no need to keep touching up those marks. Just remember this little quick tip. Just go and keep it simple. Don't do any swivel, just straight pulls. You'd be surprised how much longevity you get out of a rubber if you do straight pulls. I'm not suggesting you resort to mundane techniques or beginner techniques. It's not about that. It's about being able to adapt to your situation. Whatever comes across your path, you know a way out. So instead of changing your rubber, you know that this rubber is shot. You can still use it, but now you have to change your technique up and just do straight pulls and keep it simple. Straight pulls will never, ever leave that mark. Even on a bad rubber, you can do straight pulls and still not have to detail. If you don't understand, if you can't see that that could be done, then I'll just have to make a separate video about for those who doubt what I'm saying. Trust me, I done been there and I done it. As you've seen in my videos previously, I gave a razor red rubber to another fellow tradesman who was on foot riding his bicycle like how I started out, and he had that rubber in there for 8 months. No, I'm sorry, 10 months, almost a year, and that sucker was paper thin. He still made it work. Now, I'm sure he was chopping up windows because he's not that thorough like I am. But still, if no one complained all those months, then, you know, he made it, you know, to the point where they didn't notice. A professional probably would, but all in all, if it looks good to you, then it looks good to them. And he's a professional. Customers aren't. Now, you got some customers that are meticulous and picky, but that's when you know to be a little bit more cautious with those folks. But for the most part, he made whatever he had work. You know, it's all about adapting to your situation. But this is Masters at Wagtail. Macafrackalacka. Peace, peace, peace.